Okay, great. Morning to the Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and it is Tuesday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And we are going to be looking at a different bill that came out of Senate Economic Development, S 328, which has some overlapping what one might call it overlapping jurisdiction. And so we have our legislative counsel with us here, Mr. Kowski, to tell us about it. And we might have some, well, we'll see where this means at in terms of thoughts. There's potential that we could offer amendment. We don't have to. So up for discussion. Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Kowski, Office of Legislative Counsel. So I'm here on S 328. It was voted out of Senate Economic Development on Friday. It is draft 3.1. This is the Senate Economic Development housing bill. And sections 7, 8, and 9 I drafted. The rest Cameron Wood drafted. So on page 10 of draft 3.1. Section 7 starts amending some municipal zoning statute.
Sorry, I am just realizing now that we said we start at 10:30 and we're like 1 minute ahead of that. Can we take like what, I'm just noticing that we have a couple of members absent. Do you mind, let's take, before we really get into it, let's take just a couple minute break, just give people Okay, this is Natural Resources and Energy coming back from a quick break. We are looking at 328. And section 789. Okay,
Perfect.
and I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Go ahead.
So S328, draft 3.1. Section 7 starts on page 10. This is amending 24 VSA 4412 municipal zoning provisions. There are 3 changes in this section. 3 different topics. So first on page 10, in subdivision 1B, this is about manufactured housing. So, currently in statute, no bylaw is allowed to exclude mobile homes, modular housing, or prefabricated housing from a municipality. This is expanding that so that it also includes specifically manufactured housing. And they cannot exclude them from any district that allows residential, year-round residential development. Except upon the same terms and conditions as conventional housing is excluded. So now in any residential zoning district. Mobile homes, modular housing, manufactured housing, or prefabricated housing. Shall be allowed, but the town can apply the same standards that they apply to other types of housing.
Yes, sir.
So just to be very clear, what it really translates to is that the source of figuring out the historic district in the town, they can maintain everything that the only thing they can't is just excluded for the fact that it's manufactured.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's making me wonder about the definitions of these things. So I would have thought that a manufactured house might also be prefabricated housing, but it is not, that is a distinct thing, or no?
There are not, there aren't definitions of those things in this chapter.
Okay,
The Economic Development Committee has worked a lot on this topic. I have not.
okay,
They wanted to be very clear that it does include manufactured housing.
okay. Fair enough. In the absence of definitions, seems okay to me. But exactly, that's how I'm feeling about it. Seems redundant, so it's all right.
This language is also in the houses. Manufactured housing, no.
Oof, okay. The section 7,
Subdivision B.
okay,
Alright, next, in subdivision D. There are 2 changes being made, they're on page 11. In any district that allows year-round development, residential development. Duplexes shall be a permitted use. With dimensional standards that are not more restrictive than those required for single family. When this was included in the statute, it was as allowed. When a land use is allowed, the municipality may apply a conditional use review and require a permit. Permitted generally does not need a permit.
if I recall, the language is. It's confusing to, or it's backwards from how I normally think about it, like allowed is more restrictive than permitted.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it's permitted. Yes,
Yes, right, and so.
No conditional use review for duplexes.
No conditional use, right, okay,
Yes.
yes,
With that,
To the same extent
okay.
that single family.
Yes, okay.
Yes,
has to go through the same
Yeah.
yes,
review as single family.
yes.
Okay,
Further down on page 11, starting on line 6. In any district that's served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development. Multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be a permitted use on the same size lot as a single-family dwelling. When this was passed initially, a caveat was added, which is now being struck. Unless that district specifically requires multi-unit structures to have more than 4 dwelling units. And so what this allowed is that in residential zoning districts where there's the area's surface, sewer and water, municipality has to allow multi-unit dwellings with up to 4 units unless they allow larger unit dwellings. So an example would be in those areas, the municipality requires a multi-unit dwelling to have 5 or more units. They don't have to allow currently under law multi-unit dwellings of 3 or 4 units.
I'm fine with this change. Yeah. Okay. Yes,
Why is multi-unit? Why doesn't it have a dash? Looks so weird. Multi-unit, I don't know, multi-unit, it's usually multi-dash unit.
Where do they have,
Line 7,
It's
Oh,
not,
that-
it does not have a dash, it does not have a,
should it?
it is the defined term in the statute, does not have a hyphen.
and curious, so weird, it looks weird to me, at first I was like,
It
what
does
is
look-
that word?
It's not, yeah, it's probably correct, it's just not how I use
Yeah,
want to change the pronunciation of it.
yes,
It's a
exactly.
unit.
it. See if Senator Ruth has issue with it.
Yes. I think that's right too.
Happy to point to the existing statute.
Perfectly fine. Okay, thank you. Okay,
All right. On page 11, section 8 is amending the definition section of the municipal and regional planning chapter. And so this is 4303. To go with the changes, when this passed initially, I think the Home Act that we're just discussing around density requirements and zoning, this concept of the area served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure was created. When it was created, and you will see in this statute, there are 2 options for how a municipality defines these areas. The second way that they are defined, which starts on page 12 and into page 13, is not being amended, but it allows the municipality to define the area in their zoning or ordinance based on the caveats that are provided. This other way it is defined is sort of much more direct, and it is adding here to that part of the definition a distance requirement. So an area served by municipal water and sewer infrastructure means an area where residential connections and expansions are available to a parcel or a portion of a parcel within 2,000 feet of municipal water and direct and indirect discharge wastewater systems, and not prohibited by some other constraints on the system. There have been questions that have come up with the planners and towns about how far away how large these areas near the wastewater and water systems are. So this is attempting to say, if it is within 2,000 feet of those systems, that is where the areas are and will require this extra density to be part of the zoning.
did this used to say, it would have been struck out here, my recollection is something about a quarter of a mile.
As originally proposed by the sponsor, they were discussing a quarter of a mile.
Okay.
This is an option that was presented last week by the planners.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So just to make sure I understand this, so I recall when 181 was put together, passing through committees. It wasn't, like, there were some parts of municipal sewer systems that were treated differently, wastewater systems were treated differently. those within an area like a 1B area or a designated center. And does this mean that if it's like running along an access road or a means to get to a different bus or that the whole thing can have kind of slow the whole way up? So I guess I'm remembering that there was some discussion about still containing the denser, trying to contain the dense utilization in areas that were designated for that purpose. And how is this changing that, if any, if at all?
This was not added in 181. This was added in fallback. To replace that. What you are describing, I think, is captured in the second half of this definition. Where the municipality is left to define for themselves and adjust the service area based on a list of things that are constraints they don't want to include. This is the first part of the first option. If they don't define it in a zoning bylaw or ordinance, what their service area is. This is what they have, what areas of the municipality have to respect their development requirements. And now it is, so there, I've heard that there were questions about, well, how large of an area are we talking about? How close does it have to be to the discharge systems that have available connections? This is proposing that be within 2,000 feet of those systems. I don't think there was any testimony if that is. If 2,000 feet reflects. Anything specifically? I think you could hear from testimony from the discussion last week that this was chosen because it looks like a road rule a little bit.
It's also reported on, but okay, it's on the feet.
I like that. There we go, that's the rush.
Okay, well, we'll get some more.
Yes,
Thanks for the explanation.
okay. So we should talk more about that. Okay, thank you.
And then the last change, or the last section that I was involved in is section 9, that starts on page 13. And it is amending 24 VSA 1503, which is the designation of downtowns and village centers, which you all were looking at Friday also.
But we took it out of our,
You took out some of the language. You amend different parts of 5803 than this section. Should these pieces be in the same bill?
maybe, arguably, fair enough.
I don't know if the department proposed this change to you. They did propose this change to some economic development.
So what's it do?
So, it is about new town centers. So you maybe will recall that as part of the the designations get you incentives and benefits, and so towns want these things, and so on the bottom of page 14 and on page 15, step 2 of the downtown and village center designation has this requirement that a center reaches step 2 if a portion of the center is listed or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. They're adding unless recognized by the program as a pre-existing designated new town center. There are 4 existing new town centers, and none of them are old enough to qualify for the National Register of Historic Places. There's a specific age component. I think it's 30 years, it might be 50 years, but there's a number of, there's an age requirement. And so this program is just getting underway, and new town centers are currently cut out of it because they're not old enough to qualify.
Sorry, you said there's only 3 or 4 of them. Okay,
And the same change is made on page 3 as well. It reaches step 3 again. If a portion of the center is listed or eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places unless recognized by the program as a pre-existing designated house.
Okay. You're okay with this?
We'll keep talking, I think it's.
Okay.
We're-
Great,
so-
okay, okay, yes, go ahead.
There's another hyphen that's sitting in my brain, it's really existing, but anyway, they're out of style right now. Are they? I'm so old school, I guess, but, my question is, the new town center, that is a actual defined thing somewhere else, if I recall, yes, okay. And, that this is saying,
So
when we,
when we redid the designation program, there used to be 5 designations.
yeah,
Now there's only 2. And so they combined 3 of the designated areas into 1.
okay,
They combined downtown village centers and new town centers into one thing.
okay,
New town centers are unlike those 2 things because they are in fact new.
new, they're not old, they're not historic.
Yes.
Okay, so this is trying to just reconcile that, thing, okay.
Well, follow up question to that, if I am recalling, there were designations that were going away. This new town center is one of them,
Well, they're all going away.
but let's put it,
Yes.
okay, so this is,
So we had these areas that were designated.
Yeah.
Downtowns, village centers and new town centers all look different, but we put them all in the same category now, and those towns that have those areas. Are now vying to become eligible for the benefits and incentives under this program, and. We sort of we smashed these programs together. And one thing that was not specifically acknowledged is that you all made a requirement that it has to be eligible for. The historic register, but new town centers are by definition not.
mhm. I'm just wondering about. When the new town center designation goes away,
It's gone, essentially.
so that this language will become ineffectual. Or do we, or, you know, is it the intent that it would always be eligible? Does that question make sense?
This is a very awkward thing legally,
Mm.
because you are transferring an existing program into a new program.
So, wondering if, I'm just, in terms of, I don't have strong feelings about this, but just thinking about. If the intent is that if it was designated as a town center moving forward, it should be, just wondering about the tense here, just in terms of like. Unless it had been recognized, or. As opposed to like, it has to be recognized now as a new town center, if that designation is going away. Does that make sense?
I don't think so,
Oh, okay.
but
Okay,
Nate, I don't think so.
if you don't think so, then I trust your judgment. Okay.
I mean, maybe years from now. After this awkward transition period, this new language might not be needed, but the rollout is going to take years
Mhm.
to
Okay.
transition.
Fair enough, so somebody in like 2035 might be looking back and saying, we need to clean that up.
Yes,
So we're far enough away from that at this point that it doesn't.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to now hear from Ms. Geller from VNC. Who has comments on one of these sections at least. Thank you. Welcome.
Can I ask this a question or comment first? I'm sorry. I was looking at the appropriations and there's 5 million for BCAP. And did they make any changes to BCAP?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't.
Not is it some other draft that does BCAP?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Cameron.
Yeah.
We are working on the section by section right now. It should be out soon if it's not, but so there will be a document at some point, but I don't know.
Okay.
So
So
I've not been involved with the rest of the chair.
Okay, thank you.
it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it didn't look like it to me, but, all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For the record, Katie Gallagher with the Vermont Natural Resources Council. I sent over some language this morning, it's on the website, but I apologize in my rush, I left out key detail, which is the section that we're talking about, and that is section 8 of S 328. This, as you just heard from Ellen, is where the committee, Senate Economic Development was trying to clarify where water and sewer service was considered available. I want to note that BNRC helped to draft the Home Act, work on the Home Act. And we really strongly support that underlying goal of supporting more homes, in particular multifamily homes in areas with existing infrastructure. We do have some concerns with this proposal, both of defining a specific distance, just because it can be difficult. I'll talk about some of those reasons why, and in particular, the expansion to 2,000 feet. I also just wanted to note, as Ellen mentioned, there was testimony to Senate Economic Development last week from some Vermont planners. They have much more kind of grounded views on how this impacts municipalities on the ground. So if you would like more testimony, I would recommend reaching out to them. They provided the committee with a couple different options. The one that ended up getting to this 2,000 foot recommendation, they were recommending some specific distances to try to meet the committee's intent. The max that they had recommended was 1,300 feet to get to the original language of a quarter mile, which is still pretty extensive. They also noted that with those extensions, I think their language was that there would be concerns from municipalities and DEC at the higher numbers, creating unrealistic expectations for the potential of connecting to water and sewer lines. So just want to note that the planners did provide this, they also noted concerns with this language. Or hanging out with me. So just to quickly run through some of the concerns that we were thinking about. 2,000 feet in particular, but even a quarter mile doesn't really reflect what a general connection and service area looks like on the ground. For most municipal codes, that number is generally closer to like 50 to 150 feet, sometimes a little bit more than that, but 1,000, 2,000 is significantly higher. So the impact of that could be creating, kind of disconnect between what we are writing in statute and potentially signaling on the ground that infrastructure is available when it is not. The risk of unintended consequences. So to step back a second and talk about what this would mean in terms of those Home Act provisions, this would mainly be related to the density provisions that the Home Act put forward. So that would be allowing for 5 homes per acre or 4 unit buildings or quadplexes. So we're not talking about huge density, but this is still a significant increase from what a lot of small towns have. So this could result in projects that are qualifying for higher density, like a quadplex, by being within 2,000 feet of the infrastructure. And they don't actually have to connect, they could still just rely on their own sewer. This might not be determined a problem by the legislature, but I would, in terms of the actual impact of density, but want to note, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, that I think it might, the concern that I have is a little bit more related to municipal trust and expectations rather than the actual impact of that density. Zoning preemption, so this does have the effect of overriding local zoning in some cases. And for some towns that could be zoning districts that are intentionally planned for lower density. Just as an example, some towns might have a sewer and or a water line that's going up a road, they allow for higher density on one side of the road. The other side of the road has steeper slopes or other certain conditions that have led them to limit density. So there could be legitimate reasons why they are choosing to have lower density. I'm not sure if I say it later on, so I'm gonna say it here. One thing that is important to note in the discussion around the Home Act, we wanted to say that if a town decides that they don't wanna have any new housing along this infrastructure, they wanna conserve that area, they are allowed to do that. What they are more limited in their ability to do is to say, we are gonna allow for connections to single family homes, but not multifamily homes. So if you're allowing for single family connections, you have to allow for up to 4 units. This is good in terms of pulling back on lower density sprawl. It does create challenges for towns because you are essentially saying that we can't build single family homes in an area, and if anybody's talked to their towns about municipal zoning, telling an area of a town that they can't build a single family home can be a very contentious issue. So it's potentially setting up a lot of tension in our towns that might be unnecessary. The third point I have here is just pressure on constrained systems. So again, having these fixed distances without taking into consideration why a town might have planned for certain density in one side of the road or one area but not another. A lot of towns might have a certain length of infrastructure in the ground to connect to either a certain project or development, like ski resort, or certain nodes of development without the intent of connecting density all the way through. So again, just creating some potential tensions. I think it's important to note that we are currently in the middle of implementing Act 181, where we're asking towns to do the work of identifying planned growth areas with their regional planning commissions. And so this is potentially, I think, with setting a pretty expansive distance like this, kind of that message of, we want you to plan for growth areas, but actually we don't trust you. And in this case, we're gonna override it. So setting a more, a distance, if that's the way that the committee, the legislature chooses to go, that's more reasonable in terms of what people generally think of in terms of connection areas, would help to pull back from that. And then finally, just we did hear in the committee discussions and some economic development, the idea that the 2,000 foot number was specifically related to the road rule. We understand the interest in wanting to align the Home Act and Act 181, and I think that's a worthy goal, but I think the road rule in particular and what this Home Act provision is trying to do are pretty fundamentally different purposes, where the road rule is trying to limit forest fragmentation. The density provisions are trying to encourage density where we have infrastructure and service capacity. And so I don't really think that that lines up as well as what's intended. I also just want to note that most areas with water and sewer service are going to fall in tier 1 areas where the road rule doesn't apply anyway. So there's kind of a mismatch there. And just, again, if the road rule is modified or repealed in the future, then we're kind of left with this number that already is kind of ill-fitting and don't really have much of a rationale. So I have included three different options to consider in the language. Oh, I missed one, is that 1/4 mile? I think that might have
H2.
H2, yeah, might have actually been on the deleted one. Well, I'll check back on it. The first one is, and I just noted, most states don't include a specific distance, so we would be kind of an outlier, just as a note. So the first one is trying to tie this to the regional future land use area. So even if we decided to go with a 1/4 mile, even 2,000 feet, whatever the distance, if you want to include a distance, but tying it more specifically to those areas, not to for growth to acknowledge that the towns are already doing this work. I think that would be a better approach. I know that there was a concern from the committee that those areas aren't implemented yet. And so there could be a sunset provision or something like that that is added in to make sure that this goes into effect before the future land use areas are all in place. So I added some recommendations for that. So until the end of the interim housing exemptions, for example, in 2030, you could add in language. I recommended either going down to 300 feet to just be kind of, even that's a high number still, but a more kind of reasonable expectation of what that service area would be. Or connecting it to, as I said, systems, within
But
a quarter mile of the road with inward systems that are identified for growth in a regionally approved municipal plan or an existing infrastructure service area. And just to know that not all towns have a service area that's already defined. So there's a little bit of a challenge. Are we meeting where we can find these areas? And I'm not even sure that even in each municipal plan, they really define those areas.
Well, I would just say that just try to get the whole construct of what it is those 4 areas and really encouraging housing in those areas that have been identified for that purpose, where we know that's what we want. So the first one makes the most sense to me. You just simply limit it to those areas because that's the whole, that is the construct. And this otherwise undermines that potential of undermining the construct, which isn't even out of the gate yet. And they're all going to be identified by the end of the year or a couple months after, and frankly. But after that language, whether it's a quarter mile, what the right distance is, I don't know. But at least if it's contained within those areas, well, the whole thing we've been doing for the last 5 years has been to do that, and this is like all of a sudden doing intro answers. So I think we've really achieved what they're trying to achieve. The whole construct is trying to achieve the first one.
Option one.
Yeah,
We can,
I don't know what the right distance is, by the way, but
did you have more to say about option 3?
So option 3, yeah, I'm not sure I have an option 2, but option
Okay.
3 was just limiting that distance to be more realistic. So I used the number 300 here. That could still result in impact, for example, of where somebody has a long line that's trying to meet a specific development, for example. But then you still be kind of allowing, if they didn't have a predefined service area of allowing density all along that distance. The kind of add-on that I included at the end here is trying to address that situation. So it says that the presence of a municipal sewer or water line alone shall not establish that an area is planned for additional residential density unless that area is identified for growth, again, through an adopted municipal plan or infrastructure service area. That might not cover all towns, but could be helpful in some way. But I do agree with Senator Bongartz that I think that the most the solution that makes the most amount of sense is just tying into those areas that we're already developing with the towns to say that this is where they want growth.
yeah, I think we tried not to, at least try not to interfere with the towns making decisions as much as we can. So this one's just so creative. Then again, that in this area is probably sensitive to us.
I'm trying to make sure that I understand the things that you're suggesting. So this piece at the end here about the add-on, is that specific to option 3, or is that something that you could? It seems almost redundant if you tried to add it to option 1.
Yes, I think, and it would have made most sense with my option 2 that I lost.
Oh, okay.
And option 3, yes.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be necessary if you went with option 1.
Okay, and then under your option one. It sounds like there's another choice that you're sort of offering in here that it's sunset.
Or that there's a sunset prior to the full implementation of the future land use areas, so that there's some kind of provision a la the interim housing exemptions.
Mhm.
And then once we're certain that the implementation of the future land use mapping and areas have gone into place, then it kicks in that it's dependent on areas that are mapped as downtown village centers, mangrove areas, or village areas.
Mhm. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Just, that. What problem are you trying to solve here with these options?
I think to me, it's mostly about local zoning and wanting to be sure that we're not creating the unintended consequences of creating density in areas where towns have done the work to decide that it doesn't make sense to have that density in a certain area. So for example, in my town of Waterbury, we have water and sewer going up Route 100 on, if you, I don't know, if you're familiar with Waterbury, we got Shaw.
Yeah.
On the other side of the road, we have density up above, Lush Hill, different road, immediately, actually, this one really. We're gonna be loose with this example here. But there are relatively steep slopes, there's water issues. We do allow for, well, it's mixed use development, but single family homes in the area that's immediately adjacent on that side of Route 100. Because there's a little strip of land, but it would not really be a place that could accommodate without some major impacts, larger developments as in quadplexes. So our zoning has gone through the steps to determine that this area doesn't make sense. Another example could be if we want in Waterbury to extend our water and sewer up to Waterbury Center to create a new node of growth. We want to make sure that our capacity is reserved for those areas that we plan and not to then have to have up to quadplexes or 5 units per acre all along Route 100 and the areas that the town has specifically said for years and years that we don't want sprawling development along that Route 100 corridor.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'm also thinking about, one of the things I'm finding compelling here as well is just the practicality of like, do people end up having a service line?
Right.
That is that long, or does that just become considered a build out of water and sewer? How do we talk about that differently? So. I'm also, I think, but especially with your explanation just now, I think it's starting to congeal for me that it's kind of this question of, maybe 2,000 feet. Unrealistic as that may be fine in some area that is a part of the future land use maps.
Right.
As designated as one of these, planned growth area, village center, etc. So, but if it's not one of those areas that, in a way, I'm appreciating what you're saying about wanting to save capacity for those planned growth areas. Anticipating that it could use up capacity. So something to add.
Just to say and make it a different way, but we can turn like that is. 181 in particular, we really tried to make it regional and local working together, coming together on what those areas are. And this is now instead state being very restrictive and telling the towns what they have to do. And I had no resist that. And I think towns, it could actually have the reverse impact of you not extending planet there because you're gonna get what you don't want. All you're gonna have to do, and actually it makes all sense in the world for extending planet there to create that center where it really makes sense. And I'm not sure we have proven to be telling towns. What they have to do with it, so that's it, but I think if it's within, if I can come together with the. Economic development, in the areas that the towns and the regions have worked together to say support should happen.
Yes,
So that makes sense, but this otherwise thing. I don't work on it.
I think that's an important point, that in a moment where we're trying to encourage our towns to either expand or invest in new water and sewer infrastructure for housing density. When the state is deciding to preempt local zoning, I think we need to be really careful and clear about why and how we're doing that, because even with the Home Act, we saw that it can have the effect of making community members really both even lose kind of trust in their own planning process. The state is gonna come in and tell them what they can or can't do, but it's also gonna make them wary about making significant investments that we really need them to be supportive of, and we've lost systems and or had them significantly delayed because of that. And we were very supportive, I still am supportive of the home act provisions and want to make sure that they are working correctly, but I think again, the 2,000 feet a quarter mile is just so beyond what the expectation was for a town as they are working to implement the home act. Which was, already the state coming in and telling them what to do, and if now we're saying actually. You have to go even beyond that, it's delicate.
I do also just wanna flag the committee, I get to check in very briefly with the chair of Senate Economic Development. And she said she was, not speaking for the committee, but that she was open to amendments to this. You chose to.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
like, are we thinking about doing committee amendment to this potentially?
I think that is the contemplation at this point. But would love to take a little bit more testimony on this as an idea. Before we decide to, if we're going to do an amendment and what then. So,
And yes, we don't have possession, possession.
we do not.
Okay, so is this on the floor?
I think it's been
Oh,
passed to
okay.
finance.
Oh, it's going finance,
Yes, and I think it will probably likely also go to appropriations. Yeah, there are approps, yeah, so, yes.
Even if we just talk a little bit more among ourselves and community, because obviously we've had some involvement with this and you might have some. I have no idea how it might affect communities in my district, but like a give a little more context to suppose.
Yeah, that's fair. Great, anything else, Senator Beck, thoughts at this point?
I'm trying to understand that, stuff. It's good.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. Okay, so my thoughts at this point are to have, few other folks in, if we can get them tomorrow, to chat about this, because I think if we are gonna do an amendment, we need to figure that out, relatively quickly, so, we'll see how that conversation goes, and then, go from there, but otherwise, I think that is it for today, so, yeah, I am. Great, and so just to preview tomorrow, we have a few things on the schedule that have been put off. We're gonna hear about another bill, 323, which is the miscellaneous ag bill, tomorrow. We have limited time in the morning the rest of this week, so we'll try to we'll try to use it wisely. All right, that's it for now. So with that, we will adjourn.